Yo, what's good, everybody? This is Jay and Jimmy on our show, Unfair, where we take a musing approach to the sports conversation. You can always find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. Make sure you rate us and review us and give us 5 stars. You think we deserve it? Give us 5 anyway.
Gifted.
All right, we're going to dive into some great topics today. We have the NBA bubble is official, and someone already is sick. A top running back got disrespected, and we'll talk about who and why. We're going to close up with the greatest fantasy draft you'll probably ever hear.
Can't wait.
And we want to see what your lineups will look like. We'll talk about that more a little bit later, and maybe a little bit of fair, unfair comparisons. We'll wrap it up from there. This is Unfair with Jay and Jimmy. Jimmy, what's good, my guy?
Jay, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, you know me, man. Just holding on like a hubcap in the fast lane.
Speaking of which, happy early birthday.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah,
turning 30-ish. I don't know how you feel about that. If you feel the same way about aging as I do, but we'll say 30-ish.
I think I'm actually the opposite of you. I actually am looking forward to hitting the big 4-0.
Yes, I'm not.
Yes, because I'm going to look very much delicious the entire time, so it doesn't bother me. I mean, you look 5, so it's not like you're going to – I mean, you're a teenager technically.
12, but
ish,
thank you.
12-ish.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for the support you've given us on the first edition of Unfair. We've gotten great feedback. I know a lot of you love the videos. Please continue to share them. Why? Because sharing is caring. The only way we get this content out there is because of you, the people. Mm-hmm. So let's dive on in. The biggest headline, honestly, of the week is what came, this morning?
This morning, yeah.
Yeah, is the Washington football team have officially retired their name. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
Yeah, that's about it.
All right, so moving on.
Good job.
The NBA bubble is official, and we've seen players getting flown in. There's been a ton of video and content out there, and I'm telling you all, go look at it. It's hilarious. From JJ Redick shotgunning beers in a little bitty kiddie pool. No, actually, he was in like the freezing chamber. He was in a bucket of ice. That's what it was. He's in a bucket of ice water. He's shotgunning beers. You got guys playing ping pong and and cornhole. You've got all kinds of stuff going on there at the bubble. One player actually is doing a documentary of the entire time there, and it's actually pretty legit. Royce Young from ESPN had retweeted it. I'll find his name and tell you who. But that's pretty cool. And then, of course, the bad news hits us.
Yes.
So we have our first positive test, and luckily this person wasn't actually at the bubble. It was announced today that Russell Westbrook has contracted the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. He is in Houston right now in quarantine, and they expect him to be there at least 7 days, if not 14. He'll probably undergo daily or bi-daily testing to prepare for him to get there. And that, to me, has put a massive wrench into things. So, Jimmy, when it comes to our first star player catching it, what's your thoughts?
It's the approximation of a nightmare for the NBA. Granted, this happened before the season started, and he could very well be back by the start of July 30th. Well, actually, I think their first game is the day after that.
Yes, it is. I think it is.
17, 18 days away. So there's still a little bit of time for him to become COVID-free, to join the bubble, get some practices in, and get on the court for the final 8 regular season games. But this is a version of what this nightmare could look like for the NBA were this to happen to me. It's 2 different tiers of player that the NBA cannot afford this to happen to.
Okay.
First tier, you cannot afford to have this happen to LeBron, Kawhi, or Giannis.
Yes, yeah. That's
why?
True.
Because
Anthony Davis as well. I think he's up there too.
I would say, yeah, I'll put him in the second tier of players that this can't happen to for related reasons to the first tier: Anthony Davis, Paul George, and James Harden, because they drive the sport so much. You're surprised by Harden, huh?
I am surprised by Harden.
Well, that's only because I have this sneaky suspicion that the Rockets may actually go further under these circumstances than most people think. So I'm going to put him in there. You don't think they have a shot?
No. I'm thinking the exact opposite. Yep. I think they might win the West.
Okay, that's not as far as I was willing to go, but cool. We're kind of going in the same direction.
Right.
They could surprise some people.
Right.
So they can't afford this to happen to those players. So how the NBA feels right now, this is maybe half of what you would feel if this happened to one of your top 1 or top 2 tier players.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So now the question you have in there is, who does this entire scenario benefit the most? Is that going to be the veterans or the rooks or the younger players? Like your younger tier veterans to your older tier veterans, who does this benefit the most? So from 5 years up to 5 years back, who do you think is going to perform the best in these circumstances?
I think it's going to be the young people. My first thought was, okay, you have veterans who have experience. Many of them have gone deep into the playoffs. Some have won championships, and that will serve them well, obviously, in any game that they play. But I say the young people because of the way the games are going to be structured. They're going to be a lot of every other day type games, as opposed to what we normally see in the playoffs, where sometimes you can have 2, 3, and God forbid, 4 days between games for obviously television reasons, or you want your stars to be rested, have time to practice because it makes the product better. So since they're going to be playing, it's going to feel like more of a pickup game type style, I think, because of where they're going to be playing without any fans. That's usually the type of environment that you would play that sort of thing in. And with the games being played more frequently with less rest time in between, I think it's going to be the young people who are going to be able to transition into this and recover faster than the older veterans.
So if I shift this to more of an 8-year up and 8-year down, would you still feel like the younger guys are going to be the ones that's going to benefit the most?
Okay, so if you say 8 years, let's say a guy comes in the league at 19 or 20, which means that 8 years in, they're still in their prime. I would say that would be the appropriate cutoff. Really, I would honestly say maybe 30 and under versus 30 and above.
Well, I can't pull the 30 and under or 30 of above because of how some guys come in at 19 and 10 years in the league.
So they're at 29. You got an 11-year vet who's 30. Okay,
exactly. So that's why
8 years in basketball.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 years in the league itself. So this kind of leads to why I feel like the Rockets could potentially win the West. I think this benefits the veterans more than it does the young players. Yes, the young guys got the young legs. They can go and all of that. Great. They're going to do that regardless. They're going to do that in an 82-game season. They're going to do that in a 55-game season. They're always going to be able to go. But the question is are they effective on the court when they're on that type of go? This is why I feel like the veterans are going to get the most benefit out of it is they had a 3-month break. 3 months of light workout, light basketball to where they can rest up and their bodies are prepared now for this type of basketball. Perfect example. What is the biggest knock we have on James Harden when it comes to the playoffs? What's the biggest knock we have on Chris Paul when it comes to the playoffs? LeBron, that we've actually said about him on a few occasions. They run out of gas when they get to the playoffs. Why? They focus so much on the regular season and they exert so much energy, they end up falling off that cliff. Like it's the sugar high. You eat a whole bunch of sugar first thing in the morning, get you all jazzed up and wired. By the time you hit lunch, you crash. That 2 o'clock crash hits. That's typically what happens to a James Harden. It's not going to hit him this year. He's going to be prime James Harden as if this was December. He's going to be completely zoned in, focused to the point of he has no excuse not to get to the Western Conference Finals. Like zero excuse. Now, LeBron's going to benefit from it because he takes care of his body. He takes care of himself very well. And I think Anthony Davis is good to get him rest because after a while, he eventually gets hurt. That's just the Anthony Davis recipe.
That's just how he's built. Yes,
that's how he's built. And not no shade on him, but this is his track record. I'm going off of track records here, so I'm trying to be as fair as possible. But we expect Anthony Davis to eventually get hurt and not play. We had that same feeling, like I said, with James Harden. Same thing with Chris Paul. I think the Thunder have a chance to actually go to the Western Conference Finals going on their side of the bracket because they're rested. They actually have something that a lot of teams don't have, which is chemistry. That even leads to the Lakers. They just lost a player. We'll have to talk about that. Hell, you might have to throw that into yours off the editor's floor into your solo. But losing a key player like that, I thought, well, looking at the numbers based on the stats, you would think it would hurt them, but it actually is a good thing for them. And we'll discuss that later. But I don't know about their chemistry in comparison to what Oklahoma City has. Because if I'm correct, the Thunder players were still kind of practicing together. A lot of them were still in Oklahoma City or within the surrounding area, so they were doing stuff. That's why I feel like this is going to work better for the vets. Because I think the young kids were chilling at the house, playing video games, eating No-Dos and watching Oprah, some crazy mess, or watching Twitch. So they eating Haagen-Dazs and watching Twitch. They were chilling. Well, I don't think the vets were doing that. I think they were preparing themselves.
Yeah, I would say, to what you said in terms of how the vets have prepared themselves and how this has actually helped them to, it's given them an opportunity, an unforeseen opportunity to heal up in a fashion. I think that will help them in the very beginning for the start, but I don't think that that's going to save them in the end, because one thing we know about playoff basketball is more intense. There are more fouls. Guys go harder, which means that there are going to be more injuries, not necessarily big injuries, but more nicks and bruises that they would normally have time to recover from, that they're not going to have the time to recover from. And it can actually lead to bigger injuries. Because if a veteran player is out there, let's say 2 days later, as opposed to 3 or 4 like they normally might have in a traditional playoff structure, then they increase the risk of aggravating that injury and making it worse. Whereas a young person, because of their young bodies, they're going to be able to bounce back quicker from the inevitable. Guys are going to get nicked up. Guys are going to hurt. And this layoff, even though they've been able to do light workouts, I've heard people say that taking this amount of time off and then ramping it back up could actually increase the risk of injury, which is, I think, one of the things that the players had mentioned in the very beginning before they decided on the structure.
Yeah.
So I still think in that sense, just in terms of being able to bounce back and recover, especially from the inevitable injuries, whether big or small, or at least small, the young players are going to be able to benefit from that. Well, they're going to be able to just have more gas in general when they got to play again 2 days later, as opposed to a vet who has the gas that they had saved up for the first beginning of this season is going to be gone, and they're going to be back to where they usually are.
I think a lot of your vets, though, are right there still at their prime. The good vet, the ones that we are actually talking about, your LeBrons and stuff, Kawhi, your Paul Georges, they're already at the point where they can still turn it on the next game. That because they didn't have to play those games anymore. They had that break. That gap to me helps them away more because, for one, Kawhi's hurt. I'm sorry, guys. Y'all don't believe
somebody
it.
Like Kawhi,
Kawhi is hurt. Like, he has an injury that's probably going to be there for the rest of his career. He has to labor through it. He got an opportunity to actually rest that body, and that's something that he's not been able to do during the season. I don't see him laboring himself through the playoffs like he did last year with the Raptors. He's not going to have to labor as much. Paul George, with those shoulders, he got a break to where his shoulders get to actually heal. I think he's going to be a lot better. It's going to be more playoff P in comparison to his past 2 years because he doesn't have the injury. Same thing with Westbrook. Unfortunately, he has now COVID-19. Well, he has the coronavirus. Him and that knee, he actually got that knee a little bit more rested. He probably still trained properly with the right trainers, but he got to rest that knee up. James Harden's not going to run out of gas. So to me, those vets are going to be able to keep up with the young guys in comparison to vice versa.
Now, Paul George, and maybe it's a situational thing. Paul George, I can give you Paul George. Kawhi Leonard, I can't give you Kawhi Leonard because from the end of the playoffs to the start of the regular season, it's about 3 or 4 months as far as for him. So even despite the fact that he had that amount of time, and I know it was for the playoffs, they were still having to load manage him. And that's a big part of the reason why in last year's playoffs, he was joking about this after they won the championship, that he was not going to be able to be there for Game 7. So he's a player that you have to worry about. Even with this 3-month layoff, he is still going to these every other day games, or he's still going to struggle with that. He just is, like you said, because he has an injury that's going to continue to linger.
I can see that, but the other thing behind that too is because they've got these 8 games to ramp up, that gives them 4 weeks total from 2 weeks of training camp to 2 weeks of basketball.
Yeah.
I believe in that 1 month, it'll be enough time for them because they're not going to play all of those games. They're just going to do a lot of running. But I don't think that they're going to play that much.
Do you think they're going to load manage him for these final 8 games?
Yes.
So even after 4 months, we're still going to load manage you the final 8 of the season.
Well, I'll put it like this. He's not going to miss any games, but he's going to have limited minutes. I can see that just because you may as well ramp him up because their season's not going to change. They're good. The Lakers are good. I mean, the only team that you should really be concerned about is Denver. And I'm not even I think Jokic is back. I haven't read anything about him landing yet, but he did have it, and he was overseas. So there's a chance he might not show up. Yeah, he had back at home.
Yeah, he did.
So there's a chance he might not show up. So if he don't show up, Denver, you might have a problem. All right.